Dungeon Masters, we've got to talk about inventory. If you clicked on this video, you're probably like me. You just take inventory and kind of hand wave it. 5th edition's really popular with all kinds of extra planar space, bags of holding that we can keep all of our players' inventory in. And, you know, the roots of the game, the roots of original D&D that was much more survival and diving into the dungeons and resource management has kind of faded to the side. And if you kind of missed that, then I have a couple of suggestions on how you can bring that to your table. So let's talk. So if you're an old fart like me, you might remember some games by the name Resident Evil 4 and Diablo 2. The one thing those two games had in common was a inventory style system that was structured around a grid, and you had to kind of like slot your items Tetris style into your bag to make sure it all fit. Items had different weights represented by their size. Some items had different shapes representing their bulkiness, and I wonder how we could bring that to our Dungeons and Dragons game. Well, I don't wonder. I've tried to do it in my game, and that's what this video is me telling you. You'll see. So if you're interested in testing out this grid style inventory, you're only going to need one of two things. Either a inventory sheet like so, if you want to do a more advanced method where you're actually slotting things in together, Tetris style, or one piece of paper that looks like this, just several 1-inch squares, and you actually don't even need a page that big. That's just readily available on Google and easy to print out, but I will show you how you use these. But a quick recap, what are we solving here? So do you have players that like to doodle? Maybe you have players that really enjoy the crunch of taking extensive notes. It's not everybody's yum, but some people like it. But this fixes the problem of 5e kind of hand-waving inventory, and maybe that's not 5th edition's problem, but just a majority of Dungeon Masters that I've played with recently, and that's the way that I run my games, because nobody really wants to do all of the encumbrance math of figuring out, one, what is your actual carrying capacity, because it's not a simple formula, if I'm not mistaken, and it also is just really tedious adding up the pounds of different items, and I feel like when you get into half pounds and odd numbers, it just gets to be too much math, and this system will make it a lot more simple. I would not use this system if you have players who don't want a certain level of note-taking, if they enjoy hand-waving things. Maybe you have a bag of holding in your game, but you want to make it feel earned, so you start with this system. But players that are going to enjoy this are probably going to find it more rewarding playing in person than playing virtually. I feel like dealing with this kind of physical, drawing, it's a very tactile experience using this kind of, I have examples printed out right here that you will kind of like use and draw into these things, and it doesn't translate well to the internet, in my opinion. All right, without any more preamble, let's talk about how the system works. First off, to figure out how much your player character can carry, each person gets a base 5 boxes on this sheet, plus one more box for every additional strength modifier they have. So if you have +2 to your strength modifier, you can carry 7 boxes before you start to be encumbered. Encumbered, as listed on the screen there, your speed is halved. You get -1 to physical rolls and saving throws, and that -1 increases for every additional box of encumbrance you have, up to a point. Once you get to 10 squares plus your strength score modifier, you can no longer move. So if your strength score is 10 and you have +0 on your strength, you can have a total of 10 boxes on this thing filled out before your character can no longer move and your Skyrim style just locked in place. So how do you fill these boxes? Every box represents one bulk. All right, and a bulk is supposed to represent about 20 pounds. So if you can carry 5 boxes, you can carry 100 pounds beyond your equipment that you're already wearing before you are encumbered. You can then carry 200 pounds before you can no longer move. And that to me sounds about right. Characters carrying more than 200 pounds plus all the armor and equipment they're wearing seems unrealistic if you want to go for a more realism game. So this bulk number is kind of meant to be an approximation of weight. One of the problems we had talked about earlier in the video with 5th edition is the minute tracking of half pounds, odd numbers. You assign a number, the Dungeon Master does. Each thing is given a value of dash, which means its weight is negligible. You don't need to worry about it. An L or a B with a number in front of it. So L stands for a light item, B stands for a heavy or a bulky item. If you have 10 light items, that adds up to 1 bulk. And then if you have 1 bulk for each box, you can carry a total of 5 bulk before you're encumbered. I found out in researching for this video, this is almost exactly what Pathfinder 2nd edition uses for their carrying capacity. And I know I didn't come up with this. I must have figured it out through osmosis on the internet somewhere. But I really like the visual representation that these boxes can bring to this as well. But kudos to Pathfinder 2 for the simplicity in carrying math.
It's not very often that Pathfinder is complimented for its simplicity. For a more visual example here, we have this individual has a 0 strength modifier, so they can carry 5 boxes circled in green. Once they are carrying anything in the lower 5 circled in red, that would be encumbered, and all of the stuff in the gray is something unavailable to them at their current strength score modifier. And you could always, through strength score level ups, give them more boxes. Maybe a magical item of gauntlets or boots lets them carry an extra box of stuff, or you get a magical item that doesn't actually weigh something, so like it's in there but it's under your negligibles, even though it's like this massive scythe or something, right? So you can really get creative with it, and I feel like this rewards that more for tactile players or visual players. I have a dagger. My dungeon master told me that was an L. An L means it's about 2 pounds. I have a short sword, which is about 4 pounds, they say, 2L. And then we have a wooden shield, which is another 2L. So that's a total of 5L, which is filling up half of that box. I technically could do more, but getting down to the nitty gritty there. It actually works a lot better if you're doing it on a piece of paper, which I will show you with a document cam here. Alright, so I made a brand new monk character, gave him the hermit background, and these are all the items that he had access to mapped out in this style. So he has a crowbar, which we assigned to different L values to, grappling hook, 100 feet of rope, crowbar, hammer, I did crowbar twice, whoops, hammer, 10 pythons, and a club, alright? And we approximated all those things, if you don't count this one, to equal about 9L. Each one was an individual. This was a 3, this was a 2. Over here we have 10 rations, which is weighted at 5L, a water skin, 2L, and 6 torches at 3L. 10 out of 10. These are both filled. I have 2 full bulks. So I can carry something up to 3 bulks more. Down here at the bottom, I have my negligibles. I have a little spot for gold. I don't know how you want to run your game, but I typically don't track the weight of gold for simplicity, though you could if you want to run really gritty. And then there's a pouch. Let's say I had one of the items he had was a pouch, and it said it could hold up to 6 pounds. So that would be approximately 3L. So I could keep an extra 3L things before going into the encumbered spaces on this sheet. So if you do what I do, I don't track the weight of worn equipment. I assume if you're proficient with that equipment, that armor, that whatever, your shield, you're wearing it, it's just something you can carry on you. All right, so you get 1 item per limb, right? Your head, your neck, your chest piece, all that stuff. I have a visual example too. And then if you use this system, the simple one, you're assuming that you can carry whatever your armor is plus 100 more pounds. Unless you're a level 20 strength adventurer, you could carry 200 pounds before you begin to be encumbered. And that establishes, like I said, some realism, and I think it's a fun tactile system. And this is what I print out for my players to use at my table. It's just a cut up version of the RuneScape inventory from a classical RuneScape, but you can see you have a slot for each thing, right? Hood, necklace, my character's wearing robes, and I'm not a very artistic person, right? But my players who love to doodle, a lot of my students would really love to kind of have something like this and sketch out what their equipment looks like to their imagination. It can be a lot of fun. So to recap, this system rewards strength builds by giving strength something to actually do in the game. It makes dexterity a little bit less of the god stat. If you use worn equipment as negligible, I would only allow that if you're proficient with the stuff. If a person is training with a new type of armor, then they would probably consider to carry on that weight. I think this is easier work for the Dungeon Master. It's easier to approximate stuff when you're just working in groups of 10 or even numbers and you're not dealing with odd numbers and have the weights, and it encourages visual and tactile play for those kinds of players that enjoy that. Now, if you wanted to go into a more advanced mode, you would need this grid sheet here. The GM or players would have to write these things out, draw them on cards, and some cards you could have be weirdly shaped. You could still consider the squares to equal the bulk, and if something's 10 pounds, it's got to take up one of these squares on the grid, right? But then you can Tetris your inventory, kind of like I mentioned in earlier games. So you'd be working with something like this. Resident Evil looked like this, and a rocket launcher is a strong weapon, so it took up a little bit more space. It was a little inconvenient and oblong, right? This was Diablo 2's interface, and then this is kind of a mock-up of what it might look like if you were to do it in your game, right? So a sword that you're not wielding, that you're maybe carrying to a certain quest location, a MacGuffin here taking up a lot of space, and a great axe you stole from the big bad that you're going to sell in the next town. All these things are awkward to carry around, and this system can do a really fun job of representing that. I feel like this system adds a touch of classic Dungeons and Dragons and a little old school video game vibe to your Dungeons and Dragons tables. And if you want to download a PDF that breaks down these rules, everything I've gone over in this video, and my, sketched together version of the inventory sheets, subscribe to this channel. If I hit 100 subscribers, I'm going to open up a Discord where this community can get together, talk about all the different pieces of different tabletop games we can Frankenstein together to make the best game for our tables. And I'm going to start a Patreon where I will be putting more premium PDFs that I create in the future behind higher tiers. But yeah, to help me reach that, like and comment down below, and I will see you in the next one. So without any bleh.